I'd like to call to order the City of Belton Planning Commission meeting. This is Monday, August 15th. Could we have the roll call, please?
Chairman McPherson.
Here.
Mayor Larkey.
Here.
Councilmember Pryan.
Here.
Commissioner McDonough.
Here.
Commissioner Monahan Bass. Commissioner Vest. Here. Commissioner Christie. Commissioner Anderson. And Commissioner Walton.
Here.
All right, thank you. I do have a full agenda this evening with some changes to be considered for our codes, and so we will go ahead. But the first item that we have on our agenda would be the approval of minutes from the July 18 Planning Commission session.
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor. Sir.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Are there any adjustments or additions, corrections that need to be noted? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. So the first item that we had on our agenda this evening was for a public hearing for the consideration of rezoning from M1 Light Industrial to R3A PUD, Apartment Community Planned Unit Development, and a preliminary development plan for a 138-unit apartment community and a 2,600 square foot retail building on 10.29 acres for the property located at 401 North Scott Avenue. And the applicant has requested a continuance of the public hearing to a later date, and the public hearing will be renoticed when the new date is determined. Director, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Nope. The applicant has requested that continuance to a later date, and we will renotice when the new date is determined. They are working on some items with staff based on their first round of comments. So we're working with them, and hopefully we'll be bringing that forward again soon.
Okay, so we will not be opening the public hearing for that this evening. We do need to take a vote on the continuance of this to a later date. Is there a motion?
So moved as presented.
All right, so we do have a motion and a second for the continuation or the continuance of. All right, thank you, Commissioner. We do have motion and second for the continuance on the public hearing for this item. Any discussion? And can this be done with does this need a roll call, or does this?
I think just a voice vote.
Just a voice vote on this was what I was thinking. So all those in favor of the continuance?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. That will be noted and reposted for a later time. Second is a public hearing, and we will call it to order, for the consideration of text amendments to the United Development Code to adopt the following building codes, all with local amendments: the 2018 International Building Code, 2018 International Mechanical Code, 2018 International Plumbing Code, 2017 National Electrical Code, 2018 International Residential Code for 1 and 2 family dwellings, 2018 International Private Sewage Disposal Code, 2018 International Fuel Gas Code, 2018 International Energy Conservation Code, and 2018 International Existing Buildings Code. And Director.
All right, thank you, Chair, for reading all those codes. There are 9 exhibits attached to this. Each exhibit is for the adoption of a separate code, all with local amendments. The current codes that we are under are 2012 building codes and the 2011 National Electrical Code, which were adopted in December 2012 and have been in effect since April 1st, 2013. During 2018 and 2019, city staff attended several regional meetings with representatives of local and regional jurisdictions, as well as the building community regarding the adoption of these codes. Since that time, there have been some staff changes. However, the code amendments that are before you still mirror those changes that were discussed at that time. and we are now ready to bring those forward for formal adoption. The codes are in keeping with other area municipalities or also the amendments that were made in 2012 that we're carrying forward with these amendments. So if approved, this would move forward to City Council next Tuesday and a second reading on September 27th. To comply with Missouri state law, there is a minimum 90-day period required prior to the effective date of the code. So if approved on September 27th, the effective date would be January 1st, 2023, which would meet that 90-day requirement and give the building community the opportunity and the time to make adjustments to any building plans that they will be submitting after January 1st to be in compliance with the 2018 codes. In the meantime, in that period of time, between September 27th and January 1st, we will be reviewing plans under either code, depending on the builder's preference, which code they would like to submit under. And then we do have our building inspector, Ben Beauchamp, here as well, if there are any questions. But that is the proposal to the building codes this evening.
All right, thank you. All right, any questions or comments? Basically, these are just bringing us up to date with what the current standards are.
Correct. Yeah, we are a little bit behind in the adoption. The next round of codes is in 2024, so we do anticipate that we would be on this cycle for probably just 2 years before adopting a new code to keep up with other jurisdictions in the metro and adopt a similar time frame with them.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or motions?
Are we doing a public hearing or?
Oh, I guess we are in public hearing. I forgot.
Yeah.
We didn't
Not
have,
that-
oh,
not
is
that
there
there-
anyone
that
to
there's
speak?
anybody here
There's
to-
no public.
to talk about it, but hey.
I will go ahead and ask if there's anyone here that would like to speak either for or against the changes to the codes as presented. Then we will, and I ask a second time, and we will close the public hearing on that.
I make a motion, we approve item B on the agenda as presented.
All right, we do have a motion.
I
Is there a
second.
And a second, thank you. Any final discussion? I don't know why the mayor didn't get to read that long list like I did.
I wasn't gonna read it on.
All right. Seeing no further comments, could we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Best,
Aye.
Commissioner Walton,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonough, Councilman Pryan,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey,
Aye.
and Chairman.
Aye. So, thank you. We will now open the public hearing for item C on our agenda, which is consideration of text amendments to the United Development Code to adopt the following fire code with local amendments, 2018 International Fire Code. Director.
All right, thank you, Chair. Again, with the same last public hearing, this is to repeal the 2012 International Fire Code and replace with the 2018 International Fire Code. Same process and timeline as the building codes. We did include with this amendment that the recent change that was approved last month related to professional fireworks display, so that has been captured as well in these changes. Again, an effective date of January 1st, 2023 if appealed or if approved. And then we do have our Assistant Fire Marshal, Jason Oakley, here available if there are any questions.
All right. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Call for any comments either in favor or opposed. Is there anyone to speak in favor or against? And we will close the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion we approve the consideration of text amendments to Unified Development Code to adopt the following fire code and local amendments 2018 International Fire Code.
Thank you, Mayor.
Second it.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Any questions or comments? Did I see a hand down here? Okay. All right. Then may we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Walton,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonough, Commissioner Best, Councilman Bryan,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey,
Yes.
and Chairman.
Aye. So thank you. That motion does carry as well. Next, we'll call public hearing to order for the consideration of the text amendments to the United Development Code to adopt the following property maintenance code with local amendments, 2018 International Property Maintenance Code. Director.
Thank you, Chair. Same with the last two. This is repealing the 2012 International Property Maintenance Code and replacing with 2018 with local amendments. All the local amendments that are being carried forward are the same or similar to what we already have in our 2012 code. And so these would go into effect January 1st.
All right. Any questions or comments? Is there anyone to speak either in favor or against? Ask one more time. Anyone in favor or against that would like to speak? Then we will close the public hearing and ask the commission if there are any additional questions or comments. Or we'd entertain a motion.
A ribbon driveway is a driveway that the entire parking pad is not paved. It's essentially just the portion that the tires will drive on, or wheels will drive on, that is paved.
Great question. That's what I thought it was, but I'm glad you asked. All right. Any other questions? Or is there a motion?
I make a motion for the consideration of text amendments to the Unified Development Code to adopt the following property maintenance code with local amendments, 2018 International Property Maintenance Code.
All right. We do have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mayor. Any final questions or comments? Seeing none, may we have the roll call?
Commissioner Best,
Aye.
Commissioner Walton,
Aye.
Commissioner McDonough, Councilman Bryan,
Aye.
Mayor Larkey,
Yes.
and Chairman.
Aye. So that motion does carry. We do have one additional public hearing that we'll call into session, and this is for the consideration of text amendments to the United Development Code to modify or create new regulations deemed necessary to improve the effectiveness of the code and to clarify existing standards. Said text amendments include, but are not limited to, following standards for signage, residential driveways, fencing, and the site development review process and procedures. Director.
All right, thank you, Chair. This one might take just a little bit longer to go through because there are quite a few changes. I do have the staff report up as well. So I'll just go section by section of what the changes are and just kind of hit the high points. So the first section is related to the preliminary and final development plan process. In repealing that and replacing with two new sections for the preliminary and final development plan, and then alternative development standards section, which I'll get into exactly what that entails. But currently our code is a little bit vague on exactly when a preliminary development plan and a final development plan are required. So we are improving that to be more specific of when those plans are required, to generally match kind of how we've already been handling it, but just to codify that and make that clear. Along with that, we would also be adding when a substantial change is approved by a development plan, establishing the length of time it is in effect, and then adding findings of facts and review criteria for approval of development plans. Another item is that currently a final development plan is only approved by the Planning Commission. So if there is a situation where the Planning Commission denies a final development plan and the applicant would like to appeal to City Council, that is common in most communities and some of our other processes, and so we're building that in as a possibility as well in the event that that does happen. Likewise, there's several parts of our code where we have submittal checklists that are actually in the code, which essentially means that if we are not following that checklist exactly, applicant is in violation of the code. But some of those may need to be updated routinely based on changes in technology. So for example, currently our checklist requires 16 copies of a site plan. We haven't required that for a number of years. And so items like that, we are recommending to just remove entirely from the code and replace with a checklist that staff will update as needed to make sure that all items are addressed appropriately in order to bring applications forward to the Planning Commission and City Council. And then lastly, we are adding an alternative development standards section, which would allow certain parts of the code to an applicant to request certain deviations, modifications, or waivers from certain minor items within the code through the development plan process or special use permit. This is actually something that we have been doing. We just don't have any kind of review criteria or standards associated with it, so we're building that into the process. An example would be the last meeting when Popeyes came in and asked for a modification to their signage. That's been fairly common with signage, some minor setbacks, things like that, a waiver of a parking space or two. So those are common requests, and we just want to build that into the code to define that process. The next section is for residential driveways, repealing that section and replacing. The main changes here are, as we already addressed in the last item, is regarding ribbon driveways and a requirement that the entire parking surface must be paved. Also adding clarifications to the driveway limits. Currently, homes cannot, any single family lot cannot have more than 35% of their front yard covered for driveways, but that does create issues on some lots with 3-car garages where they may exceed that 35%. And so rather than having to go through a variance process, we've built in an option to, if you're accessing a garage, you can exceed that 35% and go all the way up to a 50%, provided that your driveway is in line with the garage out to the street. And the benefit to that is that does allow, it does encourage more off-street parking, as well as allows homes with 3-car garages. For the fencing section, again, repealing and replacing entirely. We have, since I started, we have probably denied more than half of our fence permits, and that creates a lot of time trying to go back and forth with fence contractors and citizens on trying to explain the fencing requirements with them. And a lot of times what they're wanting to do does seem reasonable, and there are examples of it throughout the city of what they're wanting to do. Most of the time it applies to corner lots where we have currently a requirement that the front yard, the side yard on a street corner has to have the same setback as the front yard fence, which is typically 25 or 30 foot setback, which when you add that to the right of way, puts fences at least 36 feet from the back of the curb for a privacy or chain link fence, which is well outside of the site triangle or any kind of site visibility issue. And so we are recommending to reduce that to a 6-foot setback, which is in keeping with several other neighboring communities. Makes us a little bit less restrictive than Blue Springs, Lee Summit, and Overland Park. And we would be similar to Grandview, Peculiar, Gardner, and Parkville in those requirements. Currently, we are one of the most restrictive cities for that. But there are many other examples of that around the city that were built under a previous fence code, and we have not had any issues or concerns with those fences. We also currently have a prohibition on wood fences in commercial and industrial development. We are the only city with that prohibition, and in fact, the North Scott Corridor Overlay Plan specifically encourages private wood privacy fences in lieu of vinyl or other materials. So this would be in keeping with that and be allowed citywide. And then there's some other general changes, but I think the main change are those setbacks for corner side fences, as well as allowing privacy and chain link fences to move up to the front corner of the house rather than being set back halfway in the side yard as is the current code. Next, for the sign code, some general cleanup items, but some of the bigger items would be including adding an expanded definition of premise for signage. This is beneficial for signage for shared monuments and directional signage for multi-lot commercial and industrial developments. A good example of a development that already utilizes that is the Belton Gateway project, where they do have signage for Academy, a number of the other stores on multiple signs, even across Markey Parkway. And so that can be utilized by other multi-tenant, multi-lot developments for shared signage. Some of the other big items we've, as addressed in the last meeting, was the menu board signage, adding an expansion to that. We also are adding a grand opening event sign type that provides some additional temporary signage for businesses during their first 30 days of business. That's been an item that a lot of businesses have just been doing without any kind of approval or permit. And that's something that we would just like to have a code on that to address. Also allowing feather flags as a temporary sign. We do have feather flags that are put up illegally around the city. And if they're treated like a temporary sign, they could meet the temporary sign requirements with a sign height exception. So we've built that into that. And then the last item is regarding the maintenance, removal of abandoned and illegal signs. That's probably one of the bigger changes in the code. It's actually currently in the code. It's just there's not any kind of time limits or and the enforcement mechanisms are unclear. So we're clarifying exactly when certain types of signs do need to be removed. For example, if a business has vacated their premise, they are supposed to currently remove their signage, but there's no timeline on that. Most cities have a number of days, and we have built that in at 90 days. So after a business is closed, within 90 days, they do need to remove their signage, or that would be in violation of the code. Same thing for legal non-conforming signs, such as a pole sign. If the sign cabinet is empty for more than 90 days, or the sign has been abandoned for more than 90 days, it has to be removed or be in violation of the code. The last section is for the Appendix B, Development Review Committee. We are proposing to retitle this to the Development Review Process and Procedures, since that is essentially what it is. The current code has a number of processes that are in there that are not accurate to how we are currently taking applications through the process. So this table is just being cleaned up. We've changed Board of Aldermen to City Council on this list and clarified exactly what types of applications require public noticing, and added references within the code to other sections that apply to each application type, just to make that clear of other references that if you're looking at a special use permit, in addition to looking at this table, you need to go to section 40-2. There was also in here, similar to the development plan, where there was several checklists for the development review committee. We've removed that as well and just added some information about exactly when a pre-application meeting is required and what is being reviewed at those applications or at that meeting, and then some general information about applications, deadlines, completing applications, and the staff review process. So that is a summary of the items that are before the Planning Commission. These would go before City Council next week for first reading and September 27th for second reading. Unlike the Building Code and Property Maintenance Code and Fire Code amendments, these, if approved on September 27th, would take effect at that time. There's no 90-day waiting period for those.
All right. A lot there. Any questions or comments for the director? Since this is a public hearing, I will ask if there's anyone to speak for or against. One more time, asking anyone here to speak for or against. And we will close public hearing. And commission, any questions from any of you for the director? Seeing none, are there any motions that anyone would like to make?
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve consideration of a text amendment to Unified Development Code to modify or create new regulations deemed necessary to improve the effectiveness of the code and to clarify existing standards. Said text amendments include but are not limited to the following standards for signage, residential driveways, fencing, and the site development review process and procedures as presented.
All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Second it.
We do have a second. Thank you, Commissioner Walton. All right. Any final comments or questions? Seeing none, could we have the roll call?
Commissioner McDonough?
Aye.
Commissioner Best?
Aye.
Commissioner Walton?
Aye.
Councilman Bryan?
Aye.
Mayor Larkey?
Yes.
And Chairman McPherson.
Aye. So that motion does carry. And that concludes the items that we have for public hearing this evening. Director, any?
Yeah, first I would like to introduce the Planning Commission to Jenna Baker. She's our new city planner. She started a couple of weeks ago. She will, of course, be assisting us with plan reviews and items that will come before the Planning Commission. But also she has a great design background and is assisting us with improving our development guidebook and a number of other applications and brochures that will be available to the public. And a number of those items will be based off of the changes that are going through the process that the commission reviewed tonight. So we hope we will have a number of kind of new rebranded documents and guidebooks coming forward here in the next month and a half or so.
Great. Welcome, Jenna. I'm glad to have you. We're going to keep you busy, I'm sure.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
The next meeting that we have scheduled is for September the 19th. So you want to put that on your calendar. And any additional items that we have?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. We are adjourned.